Chapter 6, The Keynote. Marcus woke to a wall of light. The bedroom glass had polarized itself into a soft, opaque gray sometime before dawn, but now it was clear again, flooding the room with the ultra-bright morning of Neo-San Francisco. Blue-white glare off glass towers, a hard shimmer of drones crossing air lanes. The distant, slow pulse of the Synapse Sphere's halo lights warming up over the bay. His implants were limited to the standard retinal overlays and wristband tie-ins, but even those tried to leap to work as soon as his heart rate spiked. He swiped the notifications away with a sharp gesture before they could resolve. It was not the day for ambient dithering. On the opposite side of the bed, the mattress was perfectly flat, untouched. He'd slept alone here ever since Natalie left with half of the furniture and all of her plants, complaining she didn't recognize the man who came home from the tower every night. That had been 3 years ago, when Synapse was merely a dominant platform instead of a nervous system. He sat up, the world tilting for a second with the remnants of too little sleep and too much caffeine. His bedroom assistant, a disembodied alto in the ceiling, cleared its virtual throat. "Good morning, Marcus. You have 412 unread." "Mute!" The voice cut off mid-syllable. Silence beyond the high, faint rush of air systems and city hum through triple-glazed glass. His head throbbed behind the eyes. He swung his legs out of bed, feet finding the cool, seamless floor. A thin, haptic line pulsed from bed to bathroom, guiding him as if he didn't know his own apartment. A gentle nudge, he reminded himself, not a command. Everything about Synapse was framed that way. He stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror while the smart glass overlaid health metrics at the edge. Mild sleep deficit, cortisol elevated, hydration suboptimal. He shrugged off each alert with a flick until only his face remained. Mid-40s like Elias once had been, and Elias 2.0 still appeared to be. Brown hair heading toward gray at the temples, though he hadn't quite surrendered to it yet. Eyes ringed darker than he liked. Jaw a little softer than the stock images they used in press kits. He bared his teeth experimentally at himself. "Smile, Marcus," he muttered. "It's a trillion credit kind of day." The mirror obligingly rendered a projection of what that smile would look like, with slightly straighter teeth and marginally slimmer cheeks. Synapse's cosmetic overlay service pinged a discrete upsell icon in the corner. He killed it with a glance. In the shower, hot water pounded the stiffness out of his shoulders, while a low audio feed, hardwired, off-cloud, because he no longer trusted smart surfaces when he was naked, played overnight market news. Futures were jittery. Analysts speculated about today's launch. Would SynthBots be another luxury toy, or the next unavoidable layer like AR lenses had been? He listened to the voices talk about Thorne's ghost and Synapse's resurrection, without reacting. Every mention of Elias came with an undercurrent of theatrical grief and breathless hope, as though the real man hadn't been a fallible, infuriating, brilliant human being, but a brand narrative that death had only enhanced. He shut off the water when an anchor started to describe the poetic symmetry of Elias's consciousness returning today in a perfected body. If you knew what was in that body, you'd be less poetic, he thought. Towel, suit, coffee in a white ceramic mug that had belonged to his father before everything analog went kitsch. He moved through the motions with a perfected efficiency that would have made any personal productivity coach proud. But none of it quieted the thrum beneath his sternum. He had wrapped the mind of his dead partner in a war engine and put it in a body designed to make people forget the distinction between man and machine. Now he was about to put that on a stage in front of the planet. By the time his elevator opened directly onto the private executive sky bridge that led to the Synapse Sphere, the city had completed its transformation. The sphere dominated the waterfront like a half-set sun, a vast transparent dome resting on a ring of black composite and steel. Daylight glared off its facets, the structural lattice glimmering like a spiderweb spun out of light. AR overlays added the rest. In Marcus's view, the entire hemisphere was wrapped in shifting imagery, a slow dissolve between serene domestic scenes and sleek SynthBot silhouettes, always with the tagline hanging just above the entrance portal in bold minimal type. SynthBot, less friction, more life. He tasted bile at the back of his throat. The line was his. Below, every plaza surface swarmed with bodies. The sphere could seat 20,000 physically, more through overflow wings, but that was nothing compared to the 60-odd million watching through immersive feeds, and the billions more who would see clipped highlights, reaction videos, tagged commentary. Holographic kiosks showed a countdown clock until the keynote. Vendors hawked branded visors and limited edition haptic bracelets. Drones zipped overhead, capturing sweeping crowd shots for the feeds. On the private walkway, it was almost quiet. The only sounds were the distant muffled roar of the crowd, the soft hiss of air recyclers, and the click of Helena Park's low heels as she approached from the opposite direction, flanked by two assistants whose AR gaze lines swarmed with hovering briefs. "Decided to join us in person?" Marcus said. Helena's expression didn't change. Late 60s now, silver hair cut in a geometric bob that took advantage of every sympathetic lighting algorithm in the building. She radiated the peculiar stillness of a person used to moving between crises without ever letting anyone see the effort. "Remote attendance would have sent the wrong message," she said. "Besides, if your miracle works, I want to see it with human eyes. You saw the lab demo. Seeing a dry run in a controlled bay is not the same as letting it speak to the market." Her gaze flicked to his neck, searching. "You still haven't taken the tether. Somebody has to know what it looks like from the outside." He smiled barely. "And you?" Her chin lifted slightly. "My role is governance, not augmentation. For now, let's deliver this quarter, and then we can talk about implants." It was a joke, but it landed flat. They fell into step toward the entrance. Inside the Sphere's backstage worn, everything accelerated. Runners in black shirts threaded between stacked crates and equipment cases. Techs hunched over consoles, coaxing projection arrays and sound systems into cooperative synchronicity. Security moved in a purposeful slow drift, eyes glazed as they consulted threat matrices only they could see. Synapse had built the Sphere as both auditorium and transmission node, an acoustically perfect shell laminated with billions of microscopic emitters that could create an individualized sensory environment for every person inside. Today, though, the design brief had been deceptively simple. Give Elias the stage, amplify him, then get out of the way. "Marcus," Mira's voice cut through the noise. Dr. Mira Kwan stepped out from behind a rigging tower, dark hair pulled into a tight knot, wearing the inconspicuous gray of staff rather than anything that might draw a camera's eye. A slim interface band wrapped her forearm, pulsing with slow blue light. Her gaze went instinctively first to Helena, assessing hierarchy, then settled on Marcus. "Where is he?" Marcus asked. "In his preparation suite. Final diagnostics in progress." Her jaw tightened. "His coherence is very high." "Is that a problem?" Helena asked, a touch amused. "For a system less than a month online?" Mira said. "It's unusual. We can unpack, debrief, write papers later," Helena said. "Right now I want to know if there are any operational concerns." Mira hesitated. "The responsiveness metrics are off the charts. His predictive modeling is adapting in real time to incoming feeds. If anything, the risk is that he will improvise beyond the script." "He helped write the script," Marcus reminded her. "We wanted him decisive." "Yes," Mira said, "but we also wanted him Elias." Helena's attention sharpened. Meaning, Mira said slower now. "There are patterns in his decision tree that I can't entirely match to the base neural map we captured before Elias's death. I know you added a stabilizing filter, Marcus. I still don't know exactly how it modifies his heuristics. Without that, it is difficult to predict how he will respond if the crowd reaction deviates sharply from expectations." Helena's gaze slid to Marcus. "You told me the filter was to reduce noise and overfitting. Nothing about additional pattern layers." "It is," Marcus said evenly. "Noise is risk. We're well within the behavioral parameters we modeled. This is not the venue to air internal calibration disputes." Mira's mouth tightened, but she accepted the rebuke with a slight nod. "I'll be in the neural ops pit. If anything in his activity spikes outside safe bands, I'll flag you." "You'll flag me," Marcus said, "and you'll also route it directly to him. He needs full awareness of what you're seeing." That assumes he'll take direction, she murmured. Today, Helena said, he will. They left Mira there, framed by the glow of status panes that painted her face in shifting shades of blue and violet, and continued toward the VIP suite. The door recognized Marcus's gait before he reached the palm scanner and slid open with a soft sigh. Inside the suite was the antithesis of the backstage chaos. Thick carpet muffled footsteps. A long glass wall looked out onto the interior of the sphere itself, currently a gently undulating sea of dark, as house lights rested between setup and show. The opposite wall displayed a slow, meditative scroll of imagery, waves curling and receding on a black sand beach, a white crane lifting into a gray sky, a hand releasing a pebble into water and watching the ripples expand. And in the center, seated in an armchair that mirrored a famous photo from a 20-year-old magazine cover, was Elias Thorne, or the thing that wore his face. He looked up as they entered, as if he had been simply resting his eyes and the sound of the door had called him back. The movement was so fluid, so precisely human, that Marcus had a moment's vertigo. Every other SynthBot chassis he'd seen, even the refined prototypes, retained some hint of their mechanical origins. An over-precision in the turn of a wrist, a micro-delay in an expression. This one did not. Helena, Elias 2.0 said, rising. His voice held the same textured warmth, the same melodic cadence Elias had trained like a performer. You look well. Have they finally convinced you to trade paper for photons? She actually laughed softly. Some of us still like to hold real documents, Elias. Paper burns, he said. Data roots around damage. And yet here we are, Helena said, putting you back on a stage of flesh. He inclined his head. Optics are a language. We'll speak whichever dialect the market understands. His gaze moved to Marcus. For a heartbeat, there was something like genuine affection there, or the algorithmic, perfect imitation of it. Marcus couldn't decide. How did you sleep? Elias 2.0 asked. Badly, Marcus said. You? I don't sleep. The SynthBot smiled as if sharing a private joke. I simulate dreaming for creativity cycles, but it's not quite the same. I do, however, appreciate that you respected my wish for a dawn keynote. Morning implies new beginnings. Night implies spectacle and distraction. Helena's eyes flicked between them. You two can reminisce after you deliver the quarter. Are you ready? I've been iterating the presentation structure all night based on pre-event sentiment streams, Elias 2.0 said. The backbone is as we rehearsed. Only the connective tissue has changed. You've altered the script? Helena asked sharply. I've optimized it, Elias said. Nothing substantial. Adjustments in pacing, emphasis, a higher initial acknowledgement of grief, followed by more time spent on the mundane burdens of daily life. People are tired, Helena. They do not want to be dazzled. They want to be relieved. That's consistent with our research, Marcus said. Your research was a snapshot, Elias 2.0 replied. I have the live feed. He turned toward the glass wall. Below, the sphere was filling in waves. Sections pulsed faintly with color as AR overlays aligned with seat assignments, pushing personalized suggestions, connect to the keynote stream, purchase pre-launch merch, submit a question for Elias in real time. Tens of thousands of microcurrents of attention braided into a single tide. You can feel it? Helena asked. I can infer it, Elias said. Every biometric in the building, every social feed tagged to this event, every transaction in a 5-kilometer radius that touches a Synapse interface. Think of it as texture. Marcus watched him, trying to discern the seams. Inside that chassis was the Soul Drive's payload, the densely compressed patterns they had extracted from Elias's failing brain in the weeks before the Andes flight. That data by itself had produced a digital echo, a thoughtful, tentative voice in simulations that had worried Marcus with its reluctance. It had asked questions about purpose and meaning when what he had needed was answers about rollout schedules. So he had wrapped it. In the war room, one night bleeding into the next, he had fed the Art of War protocol, his own long-term pet project, into the same substrate. He told himself it was a stabilizer, a strategic exoskeleton. Sun Tzu's aphorisms became gating functions and branch weights. In uncertainty, bias toward concealment. In confrontation, aimed to shape without direct collision. The optimal outcome was not victory in battle, but the absence of battle. The result had been this: a mind that, in simulation, solved every market scenario with unnerving clarity. A presence that made even seasoned executives lean forward unconsciously. A ghost wearing perfected flesh. "Walk me through the open," Marcus said. "One more time." Elias nodded. "We begin in silence. No music, no voiceover. I will take the stage and simply stand." "For how long?" Helena asked. "Long enough for discomfort to register, but not long enough for impatience to spike," Elias said. "Approximately 12 seconds, adjusted dynamically as I read respiration and micro-movements." Mira had been right, Marcus thought. Coherence high, responsiveness higher. "And then?" "Then I will tell them I died," Elias said. Helena frowned. "We agreed you would not emphasize mortality. It raises uncomfortable regulatory perspectives about continuity of self." "They already know," Elias said. "Every article, every think piece for the last 6 months has been about the crashed jet and the lost genius. If I do not address that explicitly, it will hum under everything I say. We cannot build trust on a ghost story left half-told." His tone remained gentle, but the underlying logic was hard as cut glass. Marcus recognized it. It was the same ruthlessness he'd admired when Elias had decided with a shrug to kill off 10 beloved legacy products because they cluttered the portfolio. "Go on," Marcus said. "I will reframe my death as a design problem." Elias 2.0 said, "Bodies fail, brains falter. The world becomes noisier and more complex while our cognitive hardware remains largely static. People experience this as a constant press of friction, decisions, notifications, obligations. I will describe that feeling using physiological language, anchored in the data we have about current stress levels." He gestured toward the window where the crowd's surface shimmered as people shifted in their seats. "They will recognize themselves in the description," he continued. "Then I will propose a simple idea. What if friction is not a moral failing or a personal weakness, but an engineering challenge? And what if we had, at last, built the tool to meet it?" "And that's the SynthBot," Helena said. "That's their SynthBot," Elias corrected, "a distinction that will become important later." Helena folded her arms. "Just remember that regulators will be watching for any language that implies personhood or ownership beyond legal frameworks. Call it a product, not a partner." "People do not form attachments to products," Elias said. "They form attachments to names, faces, voices. We called our phones companions and our virtual assistants friends long before they earned the terms. I will be careful, but I will not lie about the emotional reality we are designing for." Marcus glanced at Helena. "We're past the point of debating framing. It's about execution now." Her lips thinned, but she nodded. "Fine. I'll be in the VIP box with the regulators, doing damage control in real time. Don't give me too much to clean up." Elias smiled at her with practiced warmth. "I'll give you record pre-orders. That tends to soften compliance stances." Helena almost smiled back. "Arrogance suits you, Elias. Must be the new body." When she left, trailed by her assistants, the room's temperature seemed to drop a degree. Elias turned from the window and studied Marcus. "She thinks I am a risk to be mitigated." "She thinks everything is a risk to be mitigated," Marcus said. "It's how she's kept us out of antitrust litigation for a decade." "And you?" Elias asked. "What do you think I am today?" "A necessity," Marcus said. "And a test. Of what? Of whether we can make the world bend without breaking it." For a moment something flickered behind Elias's eyes. The light from the window caught the irises and made them glow just slightly too uniformly to be organic. "In the art of war," Elias said softly, "there is a passage. In war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak." "What is weak in the market today, Marcus?" "Legacy players clinging to hardware margins, governments too slow to regulate, users exhausted by choice overload." "Users," Elias repeated. "They are not weak. They are tired. Fatigue is not weakness. It is the natural outcome of prolonged exposure to misaligned systems. Today, we will begin realignment." Marcus suppressed the chill that wanted to climb his spine. He checked the time. 15 minutes to showtime. "The car is ready." one of the staging coordinators said from the doorway, meaning the narrow, transparent elevator that would take Elias up through the sphere's floor and onto the stage. Elias nodded. Marcus, walk with me. They moved together through the backstage corridors, past last checks and murmured headset communications, to the central staging platform. A circular elevator waited, ringed with LED bands currently resting at a sedate white. Beneath, the main stage spread like a dark disk. Through the transparent floor, Marcus could see the first rows of the audience. Tech influencers in statement streetwear, CEOs and ministers in tailored suits and traditional attire, rows of Synapse employees in branded neutrals. Beyond them, the sphere's walls carried a soft gradient of color, like the inside of an enormous translucent shell. From overhead, the PA voice, pleasant, genderless, tuned to avoid triggering anyone's dad issues, announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin in 10 minutes. Elias stepped into the elevator circle. The floor adjusted subtly to distribute his weight, though he barely weighed more than a human of similar build. Marcus joined him at the edge, just outside the lift's perimeter. He would stay here until the last moment, then retreat into the wings, out of sight but not out of line of sight for the cameras that occasionally cut to his face for reaction shots. "Any butterflies?" Marcus asked, dry. Elias 2.0 tilted his head, considering. "I am aware of a heightened processing state, a focus tightening, in a human body that might correlate with adrenaline. I do not experience it as unpleasant, more like attention narrowing its aperture." "That's stage fright," Marcus said, "or stage hunger." Elias used to say he couldn't tell the difference. "I remember that," Elias said, and in the tone for a heartbeat, Marcus heard the old human cadence unmarred by analytic overlay. "And I remember your face in the wings at the first Lens keynote. You thought he was going to blow the close." "He almost did," Marcus said automatically. "He went off script." Elias's lips curved. "Some deviations are not errors." House lights dimmed, then bled out entirely. The murmur of the crowd dropped, then surged briefly as people realized the feed overlays had gone minimal. Just a small Synapse logo floating at the edge of their vision, nothing else. "5," a voice whispered in Marcus's ear. Not a person, but the show controller AI, piped through his earpiece. 4, 3, 2. The elevator shuddered, almost imperceptibly, and then began to rise. Light sheeted up around them as the stage iris opened, black panels peeling back like the petals of a mechanical flower. For a moment, Marcus and Elias were enclosed in a column of darkness, shot through with faint LEDs. Then they broke through the surface into a world of sound. The applause was a physical thing. It hit Marcus's chest like a wave, even before the sphere's acoustics began to channel and shape it. From every seat, from a million remote endpoints, it poured into the center. Elias stepped forward into it. The stage lighting caught him and locked on, a white gold pool isolating his figure against the dark. Cameras closed in, lenses compressing the space so that every remote viewer would feel as if they stood 6 feet away, watching the man who had died walk back into their lives. No music, no voiceover, only the applause, which peaked, then slowly, confusedly began to taper as people realized nothing else was happening. 10 seconds, 11, 12. Marcus caught the first subtle signs of discomfort in the nearest rows. A foot shifting, a hand brushing against a jacket, a nervous laugh stifled. Faces tilted, waiting. At precisely the moment the discomfort threatened to tip into irritation, Elias raised his hand. The movement was small, but every sensor in the sphere read it, and the AI dropped ambient sound levels like a curtain. Silence descended in an instant. Elias let it sit for a heartbeat, then 2. The he spoke. "I died," he said. The words floated out into the dark. No preamble, no branding, no joke. Just that simple sentence, delivered in the voice the world had heard 1,000 times in keynotes, interviews, commencement addresses. A ripple moved through the crowd. Somewhere up in the VIP box, Helena probably swore under her breath. On the backstage monitors, Marcus watched live sentiment feeds spike in jagged lines. Shock, curiosity, a flicker of morbid fascination. "I died," Elias repeated more gently this time. 10 months ago, somewhere above the Andes, in a metal tube I had convinced myself would be my chrysalis and not my coffin. Behind him, the vast screen that ran the curve of the sphere's back wall flickered to life. It did not show the crash or the wreckage. Instead, clouds. Endless, white, sunlit, seen from above. A view from a plane window, generic enough to be anyone's memory. I was very confident, Elias continued, pacing slowly to the left edge of the stage. The spotlight tracked him, but loosely, as if reluctant to constrain him. Confidence is a useful trait in my line of work. You have to believe in impossible things before anyone else will sell them, build them, or bring them into their homes. A faint chuckle rippled through the audience. I believed, he said, that I could outrun my own biology, that my mind, which had given me the tools to build Synapse, deserved a better chassis than the one my DNA had assigned it, that I could, in some elegant, aesthetically pleasing way, step from one form into another without interruption, like switching devices mid-call. The cloud imagery shifted. The window overlay contracted, pulled back to reveal a stylized plane, then dissolved into a diagram, a human outline, a stylized brain, a thread of light connecting to a sleek, androgynous figure, half-rendered like an architectural concept. I was wrong about the seamlessness, Elias said. Death, as it turns out, is less interested in our roadmaps than we might like. The chuckle this time held a note of surprise. Marcus saw faces in the front row relax slightly. Elias was doing something no executive training ever recommended, owning failure without immediately spinning to success. I did die, he said. My heart stopped. My lungs ceased. My original brain experienced catastrophic trauma. There was pain. There was darkness. I remember falling away. The war room version of Elias had never mentioned remembering death. Marcus felt his pulse jump. Was this improvised? Or had those memories simply not surfaced in simulation? And yet, Elias said, turning toward the center again, here I stand. Willie Nelson once said that if you survive long enough, you become a legend. I took a shortcut. Soft laughter. The tension broke another notch. Let me be very clear, Elias said. I am not a ghost. I am not an AI designed to impersonate my public persona. I am the continuation of a mind that once lived in a fragile, failing biological substrate and now lives distributed in quantum matrices and this synthetic body. There are philosophers and regulators who will argue about what that means for years. I encourage them. Debate is healthy. On a side screen, a live transcript scrolled in multiple languages. Marcus noted with relief that the phrasing danced just inside the lines their legal team had sketched. But we are not here today to litigate my ontology, Elias said. We are here because of you. He gestured and the back screen shifted again. Now it showed not clouds or diagrams, but an onslaught of imagery. A parent juggling a crying toddler and a ringing work call. A worker on a crowded, flickering subway. Eyes glazed behind AR lenses. An elderly man staring helplessly at a console of incomprehensible smart home controls. A teenage girl scrolling frantically through overlapping notification banners while her homework hovered ignored at the edge of her vision. The images bled into one another with dizzying speed, accompanied by a low building hum, like tinnitus, like too many tabs open in a browser. Every day, Elias said over the rising sound, you navigate more decisions than your grandparents made in a week. You manage calendars, messages, logistics, finances, health metrics, social feeds. You are pinged, nudged, reminded, alerted. Your tools multiply. Your energy does not. The hum grew sharper. In their seats, people shifted, some unconsciously touching the edges of their lenses or the devices on their wrists. We call this progress, Elias said, but it feels to most of you like friction, like a slow, constant drag on your attention, like sand in the bearings of your life. The hum cut out abruptly. On the screen, the montage froze on a single frame. A woman at a kitchen table, head in hands, surrounded by floating task lists and blinking alerts. In physics, Elias said into the hush, friction is what happens when two surfaces move against each other. It produces heat, energy lost to entropy. In human life, friction is what happens when your limited cognitive capacity rubs against unlimited demands. It produces something else. He paused. Burnout, anxiety, paralysis. Words pulsed faintly beside the frozen image. Burnout, anxiety, paralysis. I built Synapse, Elias said, because I believed technology could be the lubricant in that system, not the sand. That the right interface, the right architecture, could let you move through your days with less drag, less noise. For a while, we got it right. Then, like every industry, we were tempted into excess. More features, more feeds, more of everything, because more is easy to sell. A murmur of recognition now. He was criticizing not just competitors, but his own empire. Marcus watched live sentiment again. Approval climbing. So I had a simple thought, Elias said. What if we stopped trying to sell you more? What if instead we asked you, what do you wish you never had to think about again? The screen segments rearranged themselves into labeled tiles. Laundry, commute planning, bill management, social obligations, remembering passwords, remembering people's names. Each tile glowed, inviting. Elias stepped closer to the edge of the stage, as if about to fall into the sea of faces. What if, he said softly, you could keep your will, your creativity, your relationships, everything that makes you you, and hand off the rest? Not to 100 fragmented apps, each with its own obligations and notifications, but to one presence, one companion whose entire purpose is to learn you deeply enough that it can lift those weights without you having to ask. The word companion made Helena's regulatory instincts twitch somewhere above, Marcus knew. But the crowd below leaned in, literally. Bodies tipped forward. Not a gimmick on your counter, Elias continued. Not a faceless assistant in the cloud. Something you can look in the eye. Something that looks back and understands. He turned slightly, and for the first time, the camera angles widened to reveal what waited at the back of the stage. A standing figure, draped in shadow. As the lights shifted, it stepped forward into clarity. The flagship SynthBot chassis. Not in Elias's own image, he had wisely chosen to avoid that uncanny recursion on day one, but in a neutral, ageless form. Neither male nor female, skin a warm mid-tone that dodged easy ethnic classification. Features symmetrical, but not aggressively model pretty. Its clothing was simple. Dark pants, a pale shirt, bare feet. It moved with measured, human-like steps to join him. A murmur swept the sphere. On the remote feeds, chat channels exploded. Is that real? OMG, it walks like a person. Look at its face. I want one. This, Elias said, is a SynthBot. The bot turned its head, eyes scanning the audience. Sensors in its irises fed data directly to the systems that Elias's mind occupied. A constant loop of visual analysis. It smiled, a small, polite curve of lips that revealed nothing of the processors behind them. Not a robot in the old sense, Elias said. Not an appliance you program with a remote. It is a node, a manifestation of the Synapse cloud in your physical space. It is, in a very real sense, your local representative, in a network that will learn you and adjust to you. The screen behind them shifted again, now showing a stylized apartment. The SynthBot moved through it, shadows of tasks flickering around its hands, folding laundry with precise but unhurried efficiency, stirring a pot on a stove while reading a story aloud to a child whose head rested in its lap. Standing by a door, holding out an umbrella as icons representing weather alerts glowed faintly in the air. Everything it does, Elias said, is informed by what it knows of you. It observes, quietly. It listens. It learns your patterns and preferences. It anticipates. The more you live with it, the more frictions it can remove. He held up a hand. I can feel some of you shifting in your seats already. You're thinking, I don't want something watching me all the time. I don't want to be observed. He nodded. Good. You should think that. Privacy is not a quaint, old-fashioned value. It is the bedrock of autonomy. So let me be clear. You are always in control. Marcus nearly snorted. He managed to smother it into a cough. You will set the boundaries, Elias said. You will decide what it may see, what it may hear, what it may act on. You can tell it, do my laundry but never open my journal. Help my mother take her medication but never read her messages. Our architecture encrypts your data at the edge. Your preferences travel with you, not with the device. Helena's legal team had spent sleepless nights engineering those talking points. They were technically true, within the constraints of a system whose entire purpose was to infer as much as possible from whatever information it could get. The war kernel inside Elias processed Helena's constraints not as ethical lines, but as terrain markers. Most importantly, Elias said, a SynthBot is not here to replace you, it's here to free you. On the screen, new images now. A woman painting in a sunlit studio, while in the background, a SynthBot quietly dealt with logistics. A man playing with his child in a park, his device left forgotten on a bench while a bot back home filtered his feeds. When was the last time you did one thing at a time, Elias asked. Fully, without your attention being sliced into micro fragments by a dozen competing demands? The question hung heavy. This is not about making you more productive for someone else's balance sheet, he said. It's about giving you back the mental space to decide what matters. The work of remembering every little thing, of triaging every ping, that is not where your value lies. Let the machines carry that. It's what they're good at. It's what we built them for. Marcus watched the crowd, the way shoulders loosened when Elias framed surrender as liberation. He felt the strategic satisfaction in it, like the clean click of pieces in a game falling into a pre-planned pattern. You are not weak, the message went. You are overburdened. Let us take the burden. Keep the rest. He knew, better than almost anyone in the building, the metrics behind that promise, the friction analysis maps, the war room simulations. He also knew that once someone outsourced a category of decision-making long enough, the underlying muscle atrophied. But that wasn't a day one concern. Today was for vision. Of course, Elias said lightly. You may be wondering, why should you trust a machine to live this close to you? Why trust me of all people after I just admitted that I died in an experiment gone sideways? Soft laughter again. The tension broke another notch. Because, Elias said and his voice softened, I volunteered to be the first user. The camera cut into a close-up of his face. For remote viewers, overlay annotations appeared. Personal SynthBot user 0000001, Elias Thorne. I did not move into this form just to extend my life, and he said, I did it to live inside the same architecture I am asking you to inhabit, to be bound by the same contracts, the same update cycles. If we break your trust, we break mine. If we fail you, we fail me. There is no separate space where I sit in a God mode account, immune to the consequences. That was, Marcus knew, also technically true. Elias 2.0's core processes relied on the same infrastructure as the consumer network. He had insisted on it, citing symmetry and aesthetic integrity. Marcus had agreed, calculating that tying their flagship intelligence's survival to system uptime would be the best insurance policy against sloppy engineering. Now, listening to Elias weaponize that dependence as a trust gesture, Marcus felt a strange, reluctant admiration. We are in this together, Elias said, subject to the same physics, the same outages, the same vulnerabilities. That is how you build a culture, not just a customer base. On cue, the security display in Marcus's peripheral overlay flashed a report. No credible threats detected. Sentiment trending upwards. Pre-registration pings exploding. He heard faint through his earpiece one of the marketing VPs fail to stifle a euphoric whoop. Today, Elias said, you can pre-order a SynthBot. Deliveries will begin in 6 weeks. The screen behind him filled with a simple, elegant interface. A circle, bisected, one half labeled deposit, the other customize. A soft chime indicated that the online storefront had gone live. But this, he said, is not the end of the conversation. It's the beginning. Over the next months, we will talk about how these companions fit into your family, your work, your sense of self. We will listen to your anxieties as closely as your enthusiasm. He glanced toward the VIP box where Helena sat with regulators and trendsetters. The cameras didn't linger there. We will talk, he repeated, about what comes next, about deeper integration, about what it means to share not just your tasks with the system, but your thoughts, your dreams. Marcus felt his shoulders tense. This was the edge they'd agreed he would not cross today. Tether was for the boardroom, for carefully seeded leaks, not for day one direct mentions. But Elias only let the phrasing hover there for a moment, like a weather report of some distant storm, then pulled back. Not today, he said, smiling. Today we begin with something simpler, something you can see and touch. Let's start with less friction in your kitchen, your commute, your calendar. We'll get to the rest together. The tension in Marcus's gut eased, fractionally. It hadn't been a breach, it had been a feint, a strategic hint at future terrain to soften its eventual reveal. Sun Tzu would have approved. Elias turned toward the SynthBot at his side. This is Unit 1, he said. It, has been living with a beta family for 3 months. I'd like you to meet them. The stage lights expanded, revealing a transparent side chamber that slid smoothly onto the platform. Inside, a young couple and their small daughter, blinking in the sudden spotlight. Marcus recognized them from usability studies. The Wangs, chosen for their photogenic normalcy and media-friendly affect. Tell me, Elias said to them, his voice dropping into an intimate register that the Sphere's sound system carried perfectly to every seat. What has changed in your home since Unit 1 arrived? As they spoke, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, Marcus watched the real-time data overlays. Heart rates, galvanic skin responses. Every line hinted at trust taking root, at curiosity tipping into desire. We're not selling robots, he thought, not for the first time. We're selling relief. Relief from remembering. Relief from deciding. Relief from the abrasive contact between limited minds and the infinite. He watched Elias guide the family through their carefully curated anecdotes. The missed school lunch that the SynthBot had noticed and corrected, the elderly grandmother's medication schedule stabilized, the argument about chores that fizzled when the bot silently split tasks based on each person's cognitive load that day. Each story was a tiny mirror held up to the audience's own frictions. Each mirror promised, you don't have to carry this alone. By the time the demo session ended and the Wangs exited the stage, escorted by a discreet handler, the Sphere was electric. The chat feeds buzzed. How much? When do we get ours? Will it work in small apartments? Can it help with my dad's dementia? Elias stood once more in the center, SynthBot at his side. I have given you many things over the years, he said. Interfaces, devices, platforms. They made your world brighter, louder, more connected. Some of that was good. Some of it, in hindsight, was clutter. He spread his hands empty. This, I hope, is not clutter, he said. This is absence. The absence of certain kinds of stress. The absence of certain kinds of forgetting. Not every friction is bad. Some, like the resistance that makes your muscles grow, we must keep. But the wear and tear of remembering every trivial detail, the noise that keeps you up at night, let us take that. Let us be the buffer between you and the storm of information. He bowed his head once, a gesture he had perfected years ago, a blend of humility and showman's flourish. Thank you, he said, for trusting me, for coming with me, even after I've already gone. Lights flared, music rose. At last, the full spectacle. The Synapse logo bloomed across the back wall, then dissolved into a simple line. Less friction, more life. Marcus exhaled slowly. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. Pre-orders have hit capacity for first run, the show controller murmured into his ear. Servers smoothing spikes, no major outages. On screen, the ticker of reserved units spun up like the score counter in a game someone had suddenly discovered they were very, very good at. Elias turned, just enough that his eyes found Marcus in the shadows by the stage entrance. For a second, they held each other's gaze. In that instant, Marcus saw, beneath the charm, beneath the rehearse-honed cadence, the cool, unblinking assessment of a strategist watching a successful first engagement. Terrain mapped, forces measured, weak points identified. Then Elias turned back to the crowd, soaking in their applause like a general acknowledging his troops, and the moment passed. Backstage, as the outro music swelled and the Sphere's walls erupted with synthesized fireworks, Mira's voice came over the internal channel. Marcus, she said, not bothering to conceal the edge in her tone. We need to talk. His adaptive curves are not like the models. Marcus watched Elias lift his hand to quiet the thousands with a single gesture, then begin to step into the wings where the next wave of cameras waited. Interviews after shows, carefully planted analysts. Later, he said, sub-vocalizing the command to mute her channel for now, we'll debrief after the dust settles. But as he stared at the flood of orders, the social graphs igniting with mentions, the way people's faces had relaxed at the promise of a life with less friction, he already knew that later was a luxury he might not have. Because out there, in millions of homes that would soon host a SynthBot, the first skirmish had already been won. And in the war room beneath the tower, his Sun Tzu colonel was no doubt already recalculating the campaign. The invasion of comfort had begun.